Kelly Zendrian, founder of AtoZ Communication, and this is the Brand Stories podcast. This is where I talk about everything from public relations, marketing, branding, everything in between. This week, we have James Warren, CEO of Share More Stories. In our interview, we discuss everything from getting real stories from employees and how that impacts client service to how we can all do a better job communicating and listening. I am super excited. We have another listener of the podcast and has a great story to tell. James Warren, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and chop it up with you.
You got it. Well, first question is, what's your favorite brand and why?
I think I'm going to answer this in two ways. One of my favorite brands is the shoe brand Brooks. I love those. Started wearing them back in 2018 and they were just super comfortable, and I'm a big guy, so I needed that wider base of support. And I didn't think they looked very good in the beginning, but they were so functional. The look kind of grows on you over time. The other brand I would say is the brand of the city I'm in, Richmond, called it RVA. And I love that brand because I love what it means for our community and where we've been and where we're going. Yeah, those are two of my favorite brands.
Nice. Thank you. So to back it up a little bit, if you could tell our audience a little bit about what you do and how you've come to this place in your career.
Sure. Founder of Share More Stories. And Share More Stories is a human experience insights company. So we use storytelling and AI to help our clients dig deeper into people's experiences. It could be employee experience, customer experience, or it could be like a societal or social issue, and you want to engage like the public. So we do it that way. And what got me into that place, I grew up in New York, and my whole life I knew I wanted to do two things. One was be a writer and the other was be an entrepreneur. And so started a corporate career, and that was going great, but I always had this call to do these other things. And so when the opportunity kind of presented itself in 2014, I took the plunge because I knew if I didn't, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I think when I was a little kid, I was always doing storytelling and writing. I loved writing my whole life and started businesses when I was a kid. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I just chased it. So by the time I was an adult with a little bit of a window, I said, let's do it.
Good for you. Congratulations. Especially, you've hit more than the 10-year mark, so obviously there's something to it.
That's right. People like us who've made this their lives, there's ups and downs and there's challenges, but I look back at the things that we've been able to accomplish as a group and a team, and those moments just make me, you almost don't worry about how big they were or weren't. You worry about the fact that we did it the right way. We made an impact with our clients and their constituents, and that stuff really sticks with you over time. It really makes a difference.
Absolutely. So how do you combine storytelling and AI? Because AI seems to be that buzzword that either everybody's very much afraid of, or they're like, yeah, heck, let's, open up a bottle of wine and try some AI. Where do you find that?
I was at an appointment today, and the person was asking me about my work in the business, and he said, so are you guys using AI to make stories? And I said, no, nothing could be further from the truth. But what we do is, and we've been doing this for a while, since 2016, we take people's stories, they share them in our platform, and we use AI to analyze them in some really deep ways. So the first thing we're really trying to understand is, what's the emotions in that story? And I don't mean just is it good or bad or sad, but what are they really feeling about the experiences that they're having with that organization or that brand or that issue in the public? And so that allows us to first kind of almost create an emotional map of the group. And that gets really exciting because you start to see people differently when you focus not just on who they are or what they do, but why they do it and how it makes them feel. It shows up differently. So that's the first part that we started doing. And then as some of these AI tools have grown in crazy adoption over the last couple of years, that gave us some additional horsepower from an analytics standpoint. So now what we do is in our platform in Seek, you might have 50 or 100 or 1,000 stories about a topic, and people have written those stories, and you could see the emotions and you could see the themes, but now we're doing our own sort of Seek GPT in real time. So I could have a conversation with the app, with you at the same time. You say, well, what about this? And we just go dive in. Well, what kind of experience are people having if they meet these demographics, or if they work over here, or if they say they do this? And we could just keep exploring the story. So it's almost like having a conversation with one-on-one with a lot of people and being able to really kind of go back and forth with the stories. And that's what we're doing in the platform with AI.
Nice. If you don't mind my asking, so how does it pick up on the emotionality? Is there the video? Is it the audio? Is it kind of the culmination of everything? Because I could imagine with some people, whether it's you have autism or whatever it is, that intonation might make a really big difference, or that context of knowing that would make a big difference.
You hit a big word. Context is huge in the work we do. And so we started off in written storytelling, and we still do. We're adding audio now. We don't do video for a few different reasons, but one of those is a lot of the times when people are doing personal storytelling, we want them to sort of lose themselves. We don't want them to get
Mm.
caught up in how do I look or how am I coming across. It's more just get the story out of you. It's like Maya Angelou's quote. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. So we kind of feel like that's our mantra. We want people to get their stories up and out, like Dr. Angelou said all those years ago. So written is one way to do it because you don't have to get it all done at once. You can kind of write, come back to it, think. Audio works too, because I think when people are doing that sort of ancient tradition of telling their stories orally, they sort of slide back into the way we've always done that as humans. And in both of those cases, the words that they say and the way they say them and the arrangement of those words give us clues and hints. So in Seek, we trained our tool to code 55 different emotions. They're measuring the intensity of different emotions that look like needs and values and personality trait facets, and they just show up in our data set because over the years we tuned it to really see that in a story. So when we were training, we'd literally look at a story and be like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much achievement does this story seem to suggest, or how much self-efficacy does this story seem to suggest? And we did that over time to kind of build up our own database of how we score those stories. And now that's what happens in an automatic way when all the stories go in.
Very interesting. So of all the clients that you serve, do you feel like it's mostly them looking for the customer experience? Is it more amongst families? What are the biggest users for you?
That's a great question. When we started, it definitely started on the customer side and sometimes like the community stakeholder side. And then when we really figured that this is a great tool for customer experience, let's go deeper into that. That seemed to be the track we were on. We kind of hit a cycle. It's almost like for the clients themselves, they will go in their own cycle, which is, hey, maybe we start customer, but then we realize the challenges we're having with the customer are really employee related. So let's go focus there. When we have the chance to sell it in, to do both, we do. But really, we're having a lot of work right now that is focusing on that employee experience as the pathway to a better customer experience. Some of the work is much more foundational, like if we were doing real consumer insights work in terms of a new brand or a new product. And I love those kind of projects because you just really get to think about the future and they're very innovative. But honestly, I love all the work because anytime I get to be in a space where we're just thinking about stories and helping people share them and then helping other people learn from them, that's really exciting for me.
Absolutely. So on the employee side, are those kept confidential? Because I could imagine if somebody really wants to hear about my boss, they don't want the boss to know whatever it was that they said.
Yeah, absolutely. Privacy and confidentiality and anonymity are really, really critical concepts for this because we want people to be able to open up. So when a person comes into Seek, especially if they're doing it in an employee context, after they register, everything after that is anonymized. They get an anonymized user ID. And so that travels with them throughout their experience. That's number one. But number two is almost in every case when we're doing employee experience work, we're doing the analysis for the customer or client. And in those cases, it's our job to preserve that anonymity and protect their identity. And so we do a lot of work, just like most good researchers would, to think about, hey, not even just the obvious of like, don't put names in there, but is the sample too small for the audience where if we give examples or quotes, it will be too clear who we're talking about. So we work through those things and make sure that from a participant standpoint, the employees feel that sense of trust, even if it's a challenging issue. And we've had some challenging issues where maybe the organization was dealing with a merger and the cultures weren't meshing, or new leadership changes, some of which went great and some that did not go well. And so those stories are really, really deep. And to your point, we've had folks show up when we would do like live sessions, they will show up and sit down and just start writing. And I'm like, we're not at that point yet. And they're like,
Oh, no.
okay. And that's because they had so much to say. And I'll never forget the day somebody said, I really like this because this feels like the first time I've ever been truly heard. And that for me solidified. That's why we do this for the individual. The individual having that feeling of, I now feel heard, and that catharsis of, I got this out of my system. That's huge. And I want everybody to feel that way.
Yeah, that's hugely powerful. You're absolutely right. Have you seen any great examples, whether it's, a company being very much surprised by the results or just any kind of revelatory information that you've really enjoyed seeing?
Yeah, I think in almost every case, there are some interesting surprises because most of us, demographics are the baseline, that's a given. But even with behavioral segmentation, we think a lot about, well, because they did this, therefore they will do that. And that's a big part of how we do our marketing and our communications today. It's not always right. Sometimes when we are segmenting on behaviors, we're missing the individual and their motives, their drivers, their emotions. So to me, when we show people like, hey, these three people or these three types of people that you thought were the same, they actually have very different drivers. And you need to know that because you can meet them better where they're at. Or these three people you thought had nothing in common, and you're not marketing to person B and C because you don't think they're in your audience. They have the same emotional drivers, and we love those moments. Those are always really kind of fun, surprising things to share with the customer because it's truly insight. It's like, oh, I had no idea, but now that makes sense to me, and those are fun times to have with them.
Yeah. So of all the people who are using it, it seems like, at least within financial services, there's this fear of talking to the client or that you don't want to burden them or whatever it is. There isn't as much of that communication from the person to the recipient to the person who's giving the service. Are you finding that? And if so, what would you say about the importance of making sure that you know how the client feels about you?
I think in many respects, people have lots of feelings and lots of emotions and opinions about things. What we tell people is, you might have a lot of opinions, but what I really want to know is not your opinion. I want to know about your experience. And if I'm in any kind of client service role, I've got to understand what the experience is that my clients are having with me, because especially in mature industries or highly competitive industries, it's too easy to lose great clients and great customers if you don't meet their needs. And sometimes meeting their needs means you got to better anticipate what their needs are. You can't just be like, you gave me a checklist and I hit all the boxes. Why are you leaving? It's because you didn't anticipate the 11th box. And the 11th box is coming from understanding what I care about, what I value, what I need. So I'm actually going to be doing a talk in October with a financial services company at their retreat, helping them go through this process of better understanding what do your clients really care about. It's not just the things that you do in your intake and in your client check-ins and managing their portfolios. There's a reason why they're doing those things. Get to that reason, because if you get to that underlying reason, you got a client for life. And so I think the importance of it is really, it's not just about relationship building. Good relationships are built on deeper understanding of each other. The more we understand each other, the better we can be in each other's lives or work or whatever that is. And I think that's true for the client and the provider as well.
Do you feel like there's a difference whether service provider asks these questions or gauges this information versus you guys, whether it's in the level of honesty or whether it's then in that relationship building, like you said, whether it makes more of a difference that I ask the question versus you guys?
There are times it does make a difference. And in a perfect world, we would have such a frictionless relationship that we'd all be asking these questions of everybody who we impact. Well, we know that that's not necessarily achievable. So the next best thing is, what is the way, if you put two humans at a table, what are the conditions for them to have a good conversation? Like you said, trust. So if trust is there, I want more and more of our customers and clients to be having these conversations directly, not face to face necessarily, because that doesn't give that other person the chance to think about how they want to talk about it, but for them to be the ones doing the invitation, saying, I want to engage you in this conversation. So to share your stories with us. I want to know what your experiences are. And we have a number of clients who do that. And when they do, they have told us that the act of doing it is a trust builder. The act of doing it increases engagement, because it's like, wow, you really do care what I think. You really do want to hear what I have to say. And this is not just another survey. And that doesn't mean all surveys are bad. It just means sometimes we're using the wrong tool for the wrong problem. And I think in this case, when you really need for people to feel like they're heard and they're seen, this is a way to do it. Let them share their stories and focus less on what you want to know and focus more on what they're trying to tell you.
So are you seeing any kind of trends in storytelling, or is it not really that simple? I mean, are people, because of the state of the economy or politics or whatnot, is there like a certain injection of things, or is it just, look, my story is different than your story is different than her story?
There were maybe two or three big macro trends that we've seen over the past few years, little subtle shifts. Definitely when we were collecting stories across industries during the pandemic, fear was higher across the board, just inherent in stories. You can be talking about your most favorite travel experience. The elements of fear were actually higher in those stories. Trust was lower. Then we started to see a wave of, it could be the clients we had, it could be how we show up as a company and brand, but a lot of the stories from our participants across projects, trust started to become a bigger and bigger driver of the experience. And you'd see that measured either high trust environments where you'd see almost a perfect match of how a great employee experience was fueling a great customer experience, and low trust environments where the employee experience was suffering, disengagement, all these things. I would say what's happened over the last 12 to 18 months in the pattern of stories we see is just a deeper hunger for connection and belonging. And I don't mean that just in the touchy-feely way. People are really yearning to feel more connected to things. Now, some of that might be the self-selected people who do this kind of, who want to be in these kind of projects. I want to share my story. I'm kind of more of a empathetic person, or I crave more human connection. But I also think stories are fundamental to all of us. So whether that's your personality type or not, that there's a need for us to be connected to other people. And I'm seeing that and hearing that come through more and more of the stories.
Very interesting. Have you ever tried to turn it on yourself? And if so, have there ever been things that you've been surprised about?
Yes is the short answer. I haven't done it for a while, as you mentioned it, but that's what we had to do in the early days. We used a lot of stories that we wrote either for testing or that I had already written in lots of other places and ran them through our analysis. And this is my life. So I'm very close to my stories and I spend a lot of time thinking and writing about them. But also, when I find different emotions that show up in my stories, it does make me question not the data. It makes me think a little bit deeper about my experience. Like, maybe that is why I think about that way, or maybe that is why I show up that way. And that honestly is part of the insight process with our clients. Is these stories and the emotional data and the themes are really meant to make you think harder about the experiences you're having or that they're having with you. Because the more we think about that, the more we can figure out, well, what do I got to do to make it better? Or if it's good, what do I got to do to keep it? Those are the things that I should be thinking about if I'm running a brand or a product, or I'm responsible for communicating on behalf of my company, or I'm in public sector, whatever that is. We should be trying to make the experiences of the people we serve better. And if I'm going to do that, I've got to think harder about, well, what is the experience in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. So what do you hope for, as you've already achieved 10 years, fingers crossed you got another 10 in you. What do you hope that your business will be able to achieve and help people accomplish?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm a bit of an optimist in this space. I believe deeply in the power of connection. I believe deeply in the power of stories to help us learn from each other and connect with one another. And so I believe that in our communities, in our country, and across the world, that in a very, very real way, a little bit of a buck the trend. I know we want shorter and shorter content and 3-second ads, and I get all of that. And at some point, it's a race to the bottom. So where does authenticity come from again? It comes from the story. Where does connection come from again? It comes from the story. So for me, 10 years from now, I hope we've made our mark in not just in brands and in organizational culture, but in broader culture in terms of sort of stewarding and shepherding the importance, the return to storytelling as a means for not just connecting, but learning about ourselves, learning about each other, and then doing better things with each other.
I love that. And I hope that you guys, it sounds like you're well on your way to doing that. So best wishes as you're doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. So anybody who's listening to this, who's saying to themselves, my client experience or my employee experience is probably not what I want it to be. Obviously, other than using your services, what's that first step that they could take to try to make things better?
100%. We always say it starts with leaders who listen. So if you're the leader of that business, that practice, that brand, or that team, the first thing you have to do is ask yourself, am I listening to what folks have to tell me? And you can get honest with yourself pretty quickly about it. Then the second question is why not? Why or why not? And if you're not listening, is it because they don't trust you to tell you what you need to know, or because you're not making yourself available? So the latter part's actually the easier one, because if it's just like, oh, I need to better prioritize this. And if you've got the confidence and the skills to just start to engage your team or your customers and clients, go do it. Focus on asking questions more than leading with what you want to say. So start with simple things like, tell me about a recent experience you had with us. What made it either memorable in your eyes or good, or what could have made it better, or what made it bad, not so enjoyable. Just start basic, easy things like that and leave it open so that people can really lean into their own dialogue, their own word experiences. Don't resist the urge to compartmentalize it and categorize them. Like, were you in this channel and don't worry about all that. Just let them start to connect with you. Now, if the challenge is, like we said earlier, trust, then what that leader has to do is get vulnerable. And that means they have to lead by example. And this is where a lot of leaders check out, because they're like, well, yeah, I think we could really use this at our company. I'm like, yeah, probably. And we need to start with the leadership. You're like, well, no, it's not us. We're good. I'm like, can't be. You can't say you have an employee engagement problem and there's no issue with the leadership. It's impossible. So that's where we usually either win the deal or walk away, meaning they walk away because they aren't ready to have that conversation, which in the vulnerability doesn't mean I need them to prostrate themselves in front of the organization and say, hey, these are all my flaws and faults. But what it does mean is, even in your leadership team, are you guys vulnerable with each other? Are you honest with each other? So let's start there. Let's see how we can get you to a place where you're willing to share a little bit about yourself for no other reason to get you comfortable being vulnerable, because you're not going to be able to hear things that people have to say that you might not love if ego is in the way. You've got to be vulnerable. And so that's what I would say for the leader is if you're ready to listen, get started tomorrow. And if you're not, find out why, and then do some inner work to get a little bit more vulnerable so you can hear what people have to tell you.
That was incredibly deep, and I loved all of it. When you said the word listening, though, it made me think, I take it that the poor state of listening, whether it's in our country or in our world, is really basically fueling your business because we stink at it. How do you think that we could listen better besides being vulnerable? Is it that we're like nodding and smiling, but I'm not listening? Is it that we're not being as present?
Absolutely. There's little things I do, and I don't get it right all the time, that's for sure, but I try really hard. And for me, everything, you have to kind of like be honest with yourself and authentic to yourself. So if I can't be this way in my own personal life, it's really hard to be this way in my professional life. So one of the little things I do is when somebody has something they want to talk about with me, and I can tell that they're feeling their emotions about it, the first thing I ask is, do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to respond? And they will tell me. And then it's great, because I don't need to tell them things that they don't need to hear. But if they want advice, I'll give them advice. And that makes me listen intentionally. That pulls them in. And then sometimes they'll get there and say, yeah, well, no, I definitely want to hear what you have to say. And usually I'm comfortable with silence. Like if you tell me it's my turn to speak and I've been listening to you, I might need a second. So I think people need to recover and remember, like, it's okay. We don't have to fill silence, because if you are actively listening, you might not be, and you shouldn't be thinking about what you're going to say when you get your turn. Like, you might have to make a note, but make your note and then return your focus to the person. And if we practice that in everyday human interactions, maybe it's a ripple effect. Maybe it shows up in how we're doing it at work, or how we're doing it at retail, or how we're doing it in service professions. All those little things always stem back to just how we interact one-on-one. If we can change it on a one-on-one basis, then maybe we can change it at scale.
Yes, we can. Well, thank you for being a part of this. And I have a feeling that you're going to be doing life-changing and world-changing work. So thank you for sharing all of your insights with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. Appreciate it.